Hello, this is Connor Stoops, and today's HTUC video is on Tundrolen, one of the only Lumians to make me have 20 takes just to record this damn intro. So let's talk about it. From the counters and checks and teammates Tundrolen can have, as well as the weaknesses, resistances, the roles, and sets Tundrolen can use, this video is all about how to use and counter Tundrolen. So the role that Tundrolen plays is a very important question to answer, and is very easy to answer because of its base stats. Its base stats are simple, with its range attack, range defense, and speed all being the ones that are pretty bad. Don't use the range attack, it's pretty much lower than Gobademics, which is not really that thing to take advantage of, and its range defense of 66 is pretty low. No matter how much HP you have, this is a pretty low range defense to have, so avoid range attackers when you can. And its speed tier of 50 does let it outspeed a few walls, but not a lot of them. It does have a good energy and melee attack stat. The energy stat of 86 can let it use a few moves before it has to wait or rest, which is pretty nice. And 91 melee attack is pretty decent, but it's not really the best on the offensive side of things. However, it does have a good HP stat of 91 and a monstrous melee defense stat of 130. This is one of the highest melee defense stats in the game, and paired with its HP, its melee defense will be super high. And its HP stat, while it's pretty decent, does not make up for that range defense weakness that it has. So the role that Tundrolen plays is simple to answer now that we've got the base stats. It is a slow and bulky Lumian, and it does have potential to set up. Like I said earlier, its main weakness is going to be range attackers, but once you can get over that, Tundrolen doesn't really have a lot of answers range attacking wise. Tundrolen's typing of ice only has 3 resistances to ice, air, and typeless. Ice types like other Tundrolens, Barbadgers, Wintrixes, Himpers are potentially some ice types you can try to be switching on. However, most of these ice types will have coverage to hit you super effectively, so it's not really the best. Air types like Stratosaur, Zeppelin, Wintrix, the Gargolems, and some other air types as well is some air types you can switch in on, but do note that they might have super effective coverage, so just avoid them if you do see those Lumians. And typeless type Lumians are not really the most common, so just try and find a Tao Xinu that you can switch in on and abuse it. You do have 3 weaknesses to fire, metal, and brawler, and unlike the resistances, these guys are very common. Fire types like Parlin, Seer Knight, and Tartiki are very good fire types that will be constantly switching in on you. Metal types like Seer Knight, Stratosaur, Tyrex, Valkyrie, and Protagon, as well as some other metal types, will be scary metal types to be watching out for. And brawler types, specifically Barbadger and C.B.O, will be a main detriment to your melee wall breaking paralysis. So with that out of the way, let's talk about the sets for Tundrolen. The defensive set for Tundrolen is very simple. You just want to run the ability Resilience. You can try to run other abilities, but the Resilience ability is just too hard to pass up because of how good Resilience actually is for Tundrolen. The personality will be very robust, clumsy, sluggish. This is so we can max out your defenses and of course maximum damage that body crash, because body crash is very important to your offensive capabilities. Without body crash, you are basically set up fodder to anything remotely having bulk. Your other 3 moves can be bulk up, ice hammer, or rejuvenate. You can run some other moves, but personally this is your best move set and will allow Tundrolen to have the most success. And the item of choice will be Mysterious Dust. This is so we can stop ourselves from getting burned, paralysis, or toxic, so this is pretty good. You can of course run other items like the heavy armor, which you can, but personally Tundrolen's energy is too low for that, so running the Mysterious Dust will be better. And the TP is 36 energy, will let you get up to 250 energy, which will let you use 2 bulk ups and 4 ice hammers, or the other way around. 200 HP and melee defense is to max out those defensive stats that you excel at, and the 64 range attack, or not 64 range attack, 64 melee attack is just leftovers. So with that out of the way, let's talk about the counters and checks as well as its teammates. The counters and checks for Tundrolen is pretty simple. You just want to run bulky water types or Obsidian. Bulky water types have a really good matchup against Tundrolen, and some fire types as well. Obsidian is also a pretty good answer for it. However, it is pretty dependent on how much Obsidian's HP is going to last until the end of the battle. So the most consistent stuff is the bulky water types because they can resist and of course are pretty melee defensive when it comes to melee tanking. And the offensive counters and checks is simple as well. You just want to run stuff that can hit it super effectively. The new Ice type Barbadger is a pretty good offensive wall breaker for Tundrolens. You can of course use other wall breakers like Tatab, Pyrolin, Cosmere Cracked, and Valkyrie. Typically running stuff that can hit Pyrolin super effectively, which is not very hard because Metal, Brawler, and Fire types are really common in this metagame. It's pretty easy to deal with it offensively. And if you can of course use other range attackers like Zulong, who normally hit hard on Lumians that doesn't have a lot of range defense, and Tundrolen is just like that also. However, the most safest bet is running offensive Lumians that can hit it super effectively. And then we have the offensive teammates for Tundrolen. You basically want to run stuff that can take out the bulky water types and specifically other melee focused walls. Specifically range attackers like Ikizune, Baneki, Metatoad, and Deladrix are pretty good against those melee walls, and of course you can run Holvantic and Tatab, who can also specialize in melee wall breaking. So the stuff that is weak to, or that the stuff that Tundrolen is weak to, specifically bulky water types, Holvantic and Tatab can take care of those as well. And then finally we have the defensive teammates. Typically there is a bunch of defensive Lumians that would like to pair up with Tundrolen just because of how much Tundrolen can offer. Specifically fire types like Chiratiki and Pyrolin are good defensively, and other water types like Luminami is also pretty good. You can of course run some other Lumians like Tyrex, Cetamars, Harvesect, or a Phasenaut, depending on what you want to go, but typically Tundrolen fits very well on defensive teams, so you might as well run defensive Lumians who fit on those teams, specifically semi/semi-stall stuff. So with that out of the way, let's talk about the conclusion and my thoughts on Tundrolen. So Tundrolen looks to be a very good Lumian. It hasn't changed much for the past few months of this metagame, and while I do have to admit it now has gotten worse because of the introduction to Obsidian's buff, along to other melee walls like Luminami being super common, Tundrolen has kind of fallen from grace, and now since there are a bunch of wall breakers that can deal with Tundrolen, specifically the brawler types and the new ranged attackers, it's still pretty good. However, I wouldn't really use this thing over Obsidian. That's the main detriment to this thing, but if you do want to, then of course you can do that. Like the video if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you're more into these kind of videos. I will make more down the road. And of course remember that Zulong is still a dumpster fire.